Black Myth Wukong made a huge splash when it dropped, and for good reason. The trailers looked almost unreal, and everyone was waiting to see if the final product lived up to that hype. Now it's 2025. The game's been patched, expanded a bit, and is even gearing up for its Xbox launch. So, is it still worth diving into, or does the monkey magic wear off too soon? Let's start with the obvious, the visuals. This game is a flex. Every scene feels like a painting brought to life, whether you're walking through snow-covered mountains, cursed swamps, or under temples lit by soft candlelight. It's the kind of game where you'll probably stop mid-combat just to spin the camera and take it all in. On a good PC, it's jaw-dropping. On console, it still looks fantastic, though not without some trade-offs. It's not just pretty backdrops either. The creature design deserves its own round of applause. You'll fight monsters that look like they stepped straight out of a Chinese folktale. Some grotesque, some beautiful, and some so weird you'll just pause and think, what even is that thing? The combat is the meat of the game, and thankfully it mostly delivers. Everything revolves around your staff, which is both a strength and a weakness. The staff animations have real weight. Every swing feels powerful, dodges are crisp, and parries are satisfying when you nail them. There's also magic and transformations that give you a little variety, letting you mix in flashy moves and even morph into beasts for short bursts of destruction. Boss fights are where the combat shines brightest. These encounters are the heart of the game. Big, cinematic battles with enemies that each have their own patterns and gimmicks. Some bosses are brutal, but in that classic just one more try kind of way. They're the kind of fights you'll remember long after beating them. But here's the flip side. Outside of bosses, the combat loop can start to feel a little one-note. Since the staff is your only real weapon, there's less experimentation compared to other action RPGs. Yes, you can tweak builds and playstyles a bit with spells and upgrades, but it's not the kind of variety where you'll constantly switch things up. This is where the cracks start to show. Despite the gorgeous world, the game can feel surprisingly restrictive. A lot of areas are basically long corridors disguised as open paths. Try to wander too far off, and you'll often smack into invisible walls or dead ends that make exploration feel a little pointless. There are side areas, secrets, and hidden bosses, sure, but the game doesn't always reward curiosity as much as you'd hope. Sometimes exploration feels more like checking boxes than genuinely discovering something cool. Bosses are the stars of the show, but regular enemies? That's another story. The first time you face certain creatures, they're great. Creepy, interesting designs with moves that keep you on your toes. But after a while, you'll notice the same mobs popping up again and again with only slight variations. It doesn't ruin the experience, but when you're in between boss fights, things can drag a little. The difficulty curve has been a talking point since day one. Some fights spike hard out of nowhere, especially early on, and that can be frustrating if you're not expecting it. The camera doesn't always help either. In tight arenas, keeping track of a fast-moving enemy while locking on can feel like a mini-boss fight all on its own. That said, once you adjust to the game's rhythm, it starts to feel fairer. It's demanding, but rarely impossible. If you like games that reward patience and learning patterns, this will scratch that itch. If you want something more forgiving, you'll need to bring a lot of patience with you. The story leans heavily into myth and legend, pulling straight from Journey to the West. It doesn't always hold your hand. Sometimes the narrative can feel cryptic or distant, but that's also what makes it stand out. You're not just playing another generic action RPG, you're stepping into a specific cultural tale with its own style and rhythm. The atmosphere is thick. The game often feels more like a fable or a dream sequence than a straightforward story. That can be refreshing, but also alienating if you're expecting a clear, character-driven narrative from start to finish. At launch, performance was one of the biggest complaints. Stutters, frame drops, and bugs were common, especially on PC. Fast forward to 2025 and things are a lot better. Updates have smoothed things out across platforms, and while it's not perfect, Console versions still have mode trade-offs between visuals and performance, it's definitely more stable now. If you're on PC and have the hardware to push it, this game can look like a benchmark title. On console, you'll still get a great experience, but expect the occasional dip or compromise. One thing worth noting is that the developers haven't just walked away. Patches have been steady, and a free DLC combat challenge was added that gave players a reason to jump back in. It's not a huge expansion, but it shows there's at least some support beyond the initial release. The negatives are worth talking about too. Even though performance has improved with patches, you'll still run into the occasional stutter or dip, especially on console. The level design can also feel pretty restrictive at times. The world looks massive, but in reality, a lot of the paths are just narrow corridors that don't encourage much freedom. Enemy variety is another weak spot. The first time you run into some of these creatures, they're impressive and weird in a good way. But before long, you'll be seeing the same types repeated again and again, which makes exploration lose a bit of excitement. The combat, while satisfying, sticks firmly to the staff. Sure, you can add spells and transformations, but it doesn't change the fact that you're swinging the same weapon for dozens of hours. That can feel limiting compared to games that offer a bigger arsenal. On top of that, some fights spike in difficulty out of nowhere. Instead of a steady climb, it sometimes feels like you've hit a wall. Add in a camera that doesn't always keep up during chaotic encounters, and those moments can go from challenging to outright frustrating. So, is Black Myth Wukong worth playing in 2025? The short answer is yes, but with a big asterisk. If you're looking for one of the most visually stunning action RPGs out there, with unforgettable boss fights and a mythological atmosphere that sets it apart from anything else, then absolutely, it's worth it. But go in knowing the trade-offs. The exploration isn't as open as it looks. The variety in weapons and enemies is limited, and performance, while better, isn't flawless. This is a game built around big moments, not constant depth. In 2025, Black Myth Wukong isn't just a technical showcase, it's a game with real heart and identity. Just be ready to deal with its rough edges along the way.